The lights of Harmony Station blinked in the endless darkness of space. The massive station spun slowly, creating gravity for the thousands of beings living inside. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its ports every day. This was the place where the galaxy came together to talk, trade, and make deals. Han Solo wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished fixing another broken power coupling. The maintenance tunnels were hot and cramped, but he did not mind. He liked working with his hands. Most people on the station thought he was just another human engineer. They saw his quiet manner and assumed he was weak. That was fine with him. He crawled out of the tunnel and checked his tools. Everything was clean and organized. Han Solo always kept his equipment perfect. It was a habit from his old life, though no one here knew about that. As far as everyone was concerned, he had always been an engineer. "Han Solo!" a voice called from down the corridor. He turned to see his younger sister Yoonji running toward him. Her lab coat flapped behind her as she hurried over. Even after a long day in the research labs, she still had energy. "That was Yoonji for you. The Kethrian ships just arrived," she said, breathing hard from her run. "3 of them, big ones. The whole diplomatic section is going crazy." Han Solo nodded. He had seen the ships on the station monitors. Each one was the size of a small city. The Kethrians liked to make an impression when they traveled. Everything about them was meant to show their power. "Commander Vextar is leading their group," Yoonji continued. "I heard Ambassador Dalsu talking about him. He sounds important." "Important and dangerous," Han Solo said. He had read about the Kethrians in the intelligence reports. They were warriors first and everything else second. Their empire had grown by conquering other worlds. They respected only strength. Yoonji frowned. "You always worry too much. This is a diplomatic station. They are here to talk, not fight." Han Solo wished he could share her optimism. But he had learned long ago that danger could come from anywhere, even in places that were supposed to be safe. They walked together toward the main plaza. The station's central area was always busy, but today it was packed. Beings from dozens of different species filled the space. Han Solo recognized most of them. The tall, thin Veltari with their blue skin, the rock-like Goran who barely moved when they talked, the floating Zephyr who never touched the ground, and now the Kethrians. They were hard to miss. Each one stood over 8 feet tall. Their skin looked like natural armor, dark and thick. Sharp ridges ran along their arms and backs. Their eyes were small and black, set deep in their skull-like faces. When they walked, the deck plates vibrated under their weight. Commander Vextar was the largest of them all. Scars covered his armored skin. Each scar told the story of a battle he had survived. On his chest, he wore the symbols of his victories. Han Solo counted at least 12 different world signs, 12 planets that had fallen to Kethrian forces. "Look at them all," Yoonji whispered. "I have never seen so many different species in one place." Han Solo was looking, but not at the crowd. He was watching the Kethrians, the way they moved, the way they positioned themselves. Even here, in a peaceful place, they acted like soldiers, ready for battle. Ambassador Dalsu stood near the center of the plaza. The old human diplomat looked small and fragile next to the alien beings around him. His gray hair was perfectly combed, and his formal suit was pressed and clean. He represented humanity in all official meetings with other species. Han Solo felt sorry for the old man. Humanity was new to the galactic community. Only 50 years had passed since first contact. Most aliens still saw humans as primitive creatures who had barely learned to travel between stars. They were not completely wrong. Compared to civilizations that were thousands of years old, humanity was like a child. "I want to meet some of them," Yoonji said, "for my research. Understanding different cultures is important for building relationships." "Be careful," Han Solo warned. "Not all of them will be friendly." Yoonji smiled. "You sound like our father, always expecting the worst." Their father had been a soldier too. He had died in one of the border conflicts before humanity joined the galactic community. Han Solo had followed in his footsteps, at least for a while. Now he tried to live a quiet life. But some training never left you. The crowd grew larger as more beings arrived to see the Kethrian delegation. Han Solo noticed how the other species gave the warriors plenty of space. Even the proud Veltari, who thought themselves superior to most races, kept their distance. Commander Vextar stepped forward and began to speak. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. The universal translator made his words understandable, but it could not hide the menace in his tone. "People of the galaxy," Vextar said, "the Cathurian Empire comes to this station in peace. We seek trade agreements and mutual understanding." The words sounded diplomatic, but Han Sol heard something else in them. A warning. The Cathurians were offering friendship, but only to those who proved themselves worthy. Anyone who showed weakness would be seen as prey. Ambassador Dalsu stepped forward. "Commander Vextar, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to Harmony Station. We hope your visit will be productive." Vextar looked down at the human ambassador. For a moment, his black eyes showed nothing but contempt. Then he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Yes," he said, "I am sure it will be very productive indeed." The way he said it made Han Sol's skin crawl. There was a hidden meaning in those words, something that did not sound friendly at all. More speeches followed. Representatives from different species welcomed the Cathurians and spoke about cooperation and peace. Through it all, Vextar stood like a statue. His warriors remained silent behind him, their eyes constantly scanning the crowd. Han Sol watched them watch everyone else. They were looking for weaknesses, for threats, for opportunities. Even in this peaceful setting, they could not stop being soldiers. "I am going to introduce myself to some of the other researchers," Yunji said. "There is a Veltari scientist I want to meet. She studies quantum biology." "Stay where I can see you," Han Sol said. Yunji rolled her eyes. "I will be fine. This is a diplomatic station, remember?" She walked away before he could argue. Han Sol watched her go, fighting the urge to follow. She was right. This was supposed to be a safe place. But safe was a relative term when dealing with species like the Cathurians. He found a spot near the wall where he could watch the crowd without being noticed. It was an old habit. Always know your surroundings. Always have an escape route. Always be ready for trouble. The formal ceremony continued for another hour. More speeches, more diplomatic words about friendship and cooperation, but Han Sol could feel the tension in the air. The different species might be talking about peace, but they were also measuring each other, looking for advantages. When the ceremony finally ended, the crowd began to disperse. The Cathurians moved as a group toward the diplomatic quarters. Other aliens went back to their ships or their temporary homes on the station. Han Sol waited for Yunji to return. She came back excited, talking rapidly about the people she had met and the conversations she had started. "The Veltari researcher was amazing," she said. "And I talked to a Goran engineer who has been working on new propulsion systems. This is such an incredible opportunity to learn." Han Sol smiled at her enthusiasm. This was why he worked so hard to keep her safe. Yunji saw the best in everyone. She believed that knowledge and understanding could solve any problem. It was a beautiful way to see the universe. He just hoped the universe would not prove her wrong. As they walked back to their quarters, Han Sol could not shake the feeling that something bad was coming. The Cathurians had not come here just to trade. They wanted something more, and when warriors like them wanted something, they usually took it. The station continued to spin in the darkness of space. Inside, thousands of beings from across the galaxy lived and worked together. It was supposed to be a symbol of peace and cooperation, but peace was fragile, and some species understood only strength. 3 days had passed since the Cathurians arrived at Harmony Station. The tension that Han Sol had felt during the welcome ceremony had only grown stronger. Commander Vextar and his warriors did not stay quietly in their quarters like most diplomatic visitors. Instead, they roamed the station freely, making their presence known to everyone. Han Sol was working in the power distribution center when the first real incident happened. He heard shouting from the corridor outside. Through the doorway, he saw a group of Cathurian soldiers surrounding a young Veltari trader. "Your people are soft," one of the warriors was saying. "No wonder your trade routes keep getting raided. You do not know how to defend what is yours." The Veltari trembled, his blue skin turning pale. "Please, I am just trying to conduct business. I have done nothing wrong." "Wrong?" The Cathurian laughed. The only thing wrong is that weaklings like you are allowed to travel the galaxy freely. In our empire, you would be a slave. Hansol stepped into the corridor. Is there a problem here? The Kethrians turned to look at him. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Gextor, sneered when he saw Hansol's human features. Another soft skin, Gextor said. Are you here to defend this coward? I am here to remind you that this is a peaceful station, Hansol replied calmly. All beings are welcome here without harassment. Gextor moved closer. Even though Hansol was not short for a human, the Kethrian towered over him. And what will you do if we choose to continue our conversation? Hansol met the warrior's black eyes without flinching. I will report the incident to station security. The other Kethrians laughed. Station security, one of them mocked. What are they going to do? Ask us nicely to stop? But Gextor was studying Hansol more carefully. Something in the human's calm demeanor seemed to interest him. After a long moment, he stepped back. Come, he told his companions. We have wasted enough time on these weaklings. The Kethrians walked away, their heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. The Veltari trader hurried off in the opposite direction without saying a word of thanks. Hansol returned to his work, but he could not concentrate. The incident confirmed his fears. The Kethrians were not here just for trade talks. They were testing everyone, seeing how far they could push before someone pushed back. That evening, Hansol met Yunji for dinner in the station's main cafeteria. She looked tired and frustrated. How was your day? He asked. Difficult, she admitted. I tried to set up some research exchanges with other species, but everyone seems nervous. The Goran engineer I talked to yesterday would barely speak to me today. Maybe they are just busy. Yunji shook her head. It is more than that. People are scared. The Kethrians have been intimidating. Hansol was not surprised. What kind of intimidating? They keep interrupting meetings, asking questions about military capabilities and defensive systems. One of them followed me around the research labs for an hour, asking about our experiments. Which one? Commander Vexitar himself. He seemed very interested in our work on biological adaptation. He kept asking how humans might respond to different environmental pressures. That worried Hansol. Military commanders did not usually care about biological research unless it had strategic value. What did you tell him? Just basic information. Nothing classified. But the way he asked the questions, Yunji shivered. It felt like he was looking for weaknesses. Before Hansol could respond, a commotion erupted across the cafeteria. Commander Vextar had entered with several of his warriors. They moved through the dining area like they owned it, pushing chairs aside and forcing other beings to move out of their way. Vextar spotted Ambassador Dalsu sitting alone at a corner table. The old diplomat was reviewing documents on his tablet while he ate. He looked up as the Kethrian commander approached. Ambassador, Vextar said loudly. His voice carried across the entire cafeteria. I have been thinking about our trade discussions. Dalsu stood politely. Of course, Commander. What can I help you with? I am curious about something, Vextar continued. Your species claims to offer valuable resources and knowledge in exchange for galactic citizenship. But what I see are weak creatures who hide behind diplomacy because they cannot fight. The cafeteria fell silent. Every being in the room was watching now. Dalsu's face remained calm, but Hansol could see the tension in his shoulders. Humanity believes that cooperation achieves more than conflict, Dalsu replied carefully. Vextar laughed. Cooperation, a pretty word for surrender. Tell me, Ambassador, what happens when your enemies do not want to cooperate? What happens when they want to take everything you have? We defend ourselves when necessary. Do you? Vextar stepped closer. Your military records show mostly defeats, border skirmishes where you retreated, colony raids where you negotiated, instead of fighting back. Where I come from, we call that cowardice. Dalsu's jaw tightened. We call it choosing our battles wisely. You call it hiding behind stronger species and hoping they will protect you. Vextar gestured around the cafeteria. Look at this place. A sanctuary for the weak. No wonder your kind feels at home here. Hansol felt his hands clench under the table. Yunji reached over and touched his arm gently. She could sense his anger building. Humanity has contributed significantly to galactic science and culture, Dalsu said. We bring value through knowledge and innovation. Knowledge, Vextar spat. Any species can gather knowledge. What matters is the strength to use it, the will to take what you need, and destroy what threatens you. He moved even closer to the ambassador. Dalsu was forced to step back until he bumped against his table. Let me tell you what I see when I look at humans, Vextar continued. I see prey animals, soft-skinned creatures who survived only because they hid in caves while stronger species ruled the surface. You have learned to use tools and build ships, but inside you are still the same frightened animals. That is enough, Dalsu said firmly. Is it? Vextar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Prove me wrong, Ambassador. Show me this human strength you claim to possess. Dalsu looked around the cafeteria. Every alien in the room was watching to see what he would do. Some looked sympathetic, but most seemed curious to see if the Catherian was right about human weakness. I will not be provoked into violence, Dalsu said. Of course you will not, Vextar replied. Because you cannot. Because when faced with a real threat, humans always choose submission over confrontation. The commander turned to address the entire cafeteria. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Humanity offers nothing but pretty words and empty promises. They are not worthy of respect, and they certainly are not worthy of citizenship in our galactic community. With that, Vextar and his warriors left the cafeteria. The room remained silent for several minutes after they were gone. Then conversations slowly resumed, but they were quiet and nervous. Ambassador Dalsu sat back down at his table. His hands shook slightly as he picked up his tablet. He had maintained his dignity, but everyone had seen him back down from the Kethrian's challenge. Why? Did he do that? Yunji whispered. Because he wanted to make a point, Hansol replied. He wanted everyone to see that humans will not fight back. But Ambassador Dalsu was right not to start a fight. That is not what diplomacy is about. Hansol nodded, but he understood what Vexitar was really doing. The commander was not just insulting humanity. He was testing the other species too, showing them that humans could be bullied without consequences. If the other aliens believed that humans were weak, they would be less likely to support humanity's bid for full galactic citizenship. I need to get back to work, Hansol said. Wait, Yunji said. I wanted to ask you something. Some of the other researchers are planning a presentation tomorrow. We want to showcase the scientific advances that different species have achieved through cooperation. Will you come? I do not think that is a good idea. Please? It would mean a lot to me. And maybe it will help show people that humanity has value beyond military strength. Hansol looked at his sister's hopeful face. She still believed that understanding and knowledge could overcome prejudice. He wished he could share her optimism. All right, he said. I will be there. As they left the cafeteria, Hansol noticed how the other aliens looked at them. There was pity in some faces, contempt in others. Word of the confrontation with Vextar would spread quickly throughout the station. Hansol just hoped that his sister's presentation would go better than he expected. But given the way things had been going, he was not optimistic. The Kethrians were clearly building toward something. And when warriors like them made their move, people got hurt. The research presentation was scheduled for the afternoon in Conference Hall Beta. Hansol arrived early and found a seat in the back row where he could watch the entrances. Old habits from his military days never truly disappeared. The hall filled quickly with beings from various species. Scientists, diplomats, and curious visitors came to hear about the latest discoveries. Yunji stood near the front, reviewing her notes one final time. She had worked for days preparing her part of the presentation. Hansol felt proud watching her. Despite everything that had happened with the Kethrians, she remained focused on her work. She believed that knowledge could build bridges between species. It was a noble goal, even if Hansol doubted it would work with beings like Commander Vextar. Dr. Keltis, a respected Veltari scientist, opened the presentation. She spoke about recent advances in quantum mechanics and how cooperation between different species had accelerated discovery. Her research team included members from 6 different worlds, each contributing their unique perspectives. Next came Professor Mordum, an elderly Goran who specialized in crystalline engineering. His deep, rumbling voice filled the hall as he described new construction techniques that could build structures in the vacuum of space. The audience listened with genuine interest. Then it was Yoonji's turn. She stepped up to the podium with confidence, despite being one of the youngest presenters. "Fellow researchers," she began, "I want to talk about biological adaptation and how studying different species can help us all survive in harsh environments." Her presentation covered humanity's research into how various aliens had evolved to thrive in extreme conditions. The work had practical applications for terraforming and deep space exploration. She showed data about how Kethrian physiology allowed them to survive in high radiation environments, and how Veltari neural structures enabled them to process multiple data streams simultaneously. The audience seemed engaged. Several beings took notes or asked thoughtful questions. Hansol began to relax slightly. Maybe this would go well after all. Then the main door opened, and Commander Vextar entered with 4 of his warriors. The Kethrians did not take seats. Instead, they stood along the back wall, their massive forms casting shadows across the seated audience. Several smaller aliens shifted nervously in their chairs. Yoonji noticed the disturbance but continued her presentation professionally. She was discussing the potential benefits of cross-species medical research when Vexitar spoke up. "Excuse me," the commander said loudly, "but I have a question about your research methods." Yoonji paused. "Of course, Commander. What would you like to know?" "You speak of studying Kethrian physiology, but have any humans actually examined one of us? Or are you simply guessing based on second-hand data?" "We use a combination of published research, sensor readings, and voluntary medical scans," Yoonji replied, "all conducted with proper consent and ethical oversight." Vextar laughed harshly. "Ethical oversight, how very human. Tell me, what have you learned about Kethrian pain tolerance?" The question made Han Sol uncomfortable. It seemed like an odd thing to focus on during a scientific presentation. "Our data suggests that your species has remarkable resistance to physical trauma," Yoonji answered carefully. "This likely evolved as an adaptation to your homeworld's dangerous environment." "Remarkable resistance," Vextar repeated. "Is that what you call it when we can function normally with injuries that would kill other species?" "Well, yes, it is. Quite impressive from a biological standpoint." "And what about human pain tolerance? How does your species compare?" Yoonji looked confused by the line of questioning. "Humans have average pain sensitivity compared to most galactic species. We compensate through medical technology and—" "Average," Vexitar interrupted. "Some might say weak, fragile, unable to endure what stronger species consider minor discomfort." Hansol could see where this was heading. Vexitar was not asking scientific questions. He was setting up another humiliation. "I think we should return to the prepared presentation," Dr. Kelthus interjected diplomatically. "Why?" Vextar asked. "This is fascinating. Please continue, young human. Tell us more about your species' limitations." "I would prefer to focus on the positive aspects of interspecies research," Yoonji said. "But understanding limitations is important too, is it not? For instance, what happens to human bone structure under extreme gravitational stress?" "Commander," Dr. Kelthus said more firmly, "this is not appropriate for an academic presentation." Vextar turned his black eyes toward the Veltari scientist. "Are you suggesting that some topics are too dangerous for academic discussion? How very limiting." The threat in his voice was subtle but unmistakable. Dr. Kelthus fell silent. "Please continue," Vextar said to Yoonji. "I am genuinely curious about human fragility. For purely scientific reasons, of course." Yoonji took a deep breath. "Human physiology has evolved for survival on our homeworld. We may not be as physically robust as some species, but we have other strengths, such as adaptability, problem solving, the ability to work together despite our differences." "Work together," Vexitar mused, "like hiding behind stronger allies. When faced with a real threat, I would not characterize diplomatic cooperation as hiding. No? Then what would you call it when humans negotiate with raiders instead of fighting them? When you abandon colonies rather than defend them?" The audience was becoming visibly uncomfortable. This was no longer a scientific discussion. It was an Interrogation designed to embarrass Yunji and humanity in general. Every species makes strategic decisions based on their capabilities and values, Yunji replied. Humans value life and prefer solutions that minimize casualties. How noble, Vextar said sarcastically, and how convenient when you lack the strength to fight effectively. Hansol felt his muscles tensing. The commander was pushing hard, looking for a reaction. The smart thing would be to stay quiet and let Yunji handle it diplomatically. But watching his sister being humiliated in front of all these people was testing his self-control. Perhaps we should move to the next presenter, Professor Mordum suggested in his deep voice. Not yet, Vextar said. I have one more question for our human researcher. He stepped closer to the podium. You mentioned studying pain tolerance. I am curious about something. How much pain do you think a human could endure before they begged for mercy? The question sent a chill through the audience. Several beings shifted toward the exits. That is not a scientific question, Yunji said. Quietly, is it not? Understanding species limitations could be very valuable information, for medical purposes, naturally. I think this discussion has gone far enough, Dr. Kelthis said, standing up. Vextar did not even look at her. His eyes remained fixed on Yunji. Do you know what I think, human female? I think your entire species exists only because stronger races allow it. You survive on the charity of others. That is not true, Yunji said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. Prove it, Vextar challenged. Show me this human strength you claim to possess. This is a scientific conference, not a battlefield. Everything is a battlefield, Vextar replied. The weak just prefer to pretend otherwise. He gestured around the room. Look at them all, watching to see what the human will do. They know the truth, even if you refuse to admit it. Hansol looked around the conference hall. Most of the audience was indeed watching Yunji with a mixture of curiosity and pity. They were waiting to see if she would break under the pressure. Your research is meaningless, Vextar continued, because it is based on the delusion that different species can truly cooperate as equals. But equality requires equal strength, and humans will never be equal to warrior races like mine. Strength is not just physical, Yunji said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Is it not? Then demonstrate this other kind of strength. Make me respect your species. I do not need to prove anything to you. Vextar smiled his predatory smile. Because you cannot. Because when faced with a real challenge, humans always retreat into their comfortable lies about cooperation and understanding. The commander turned to address the entire audience. Observe carefully, everyone. This is what human courage looks like when confronted with reality. Hansol had heard. Enough. He started to stand but caught himself. Getting involved would only make things worse for Yunji. He forced himself to remain seated, but his hands were clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. I think we have seen enough, Vextar announced. The presentation is over. Without another word, he and his warriors left the conference hall. The audience sat in stunned silence for several moments. Then people began filing out quickly, avoiding eye contact with Yunji. Dr. Kelthis approached the podium. I am sorry about that, she said gently. Your research was excellent. Do not let him make you think otherwise. Yunji nodded but did not speak. Hansol could see tears forming in her eyes, though she was fighting hard not to cry in public. Soon, only the siblings remained in the empty conference hall. Yunji finally let the tears fall. He made me look like a fool, she whispered. No, Hansol said firmly. He made himself look like a bully. But everyone just sat there and watched. No one stood up for me. Hansol pulled his sister into a gentle hug. They were afraid. Fear makes people do nothing even when they know. 2 days passed after the disastrous research presentation. Yunji had barely left their quarters, spending most of her time reviewing data and avoiding contact with other beings on the station. Hansol could see that Vextar's words had hurt her deeply. The entire atmosphere on Harmony Station had changed. Conversations stopped when humans walked by. Meetings that had included human representatives were suddenly rescheduled without them. Ambassador Dalsu looked older and more tired, each day as doors that had been opened to humanity began closing one by one. Commander Vextar seemed pleased with the results. He and his warriors moved through the station with even more arrogance than before. They had proven their point about human weakness, and now they were enjoying the respect that came from intimidating others. On the third morning, Han Sol was working in the environmental control section when Yunji found him. She looked determined, which was both encouraging and worrying. "I have been thinking," she said without greeting, "about what happened at the presentation. Yunji, it was not your fault. Vextar was deliberately trying to humiliate you." "I know, but maybe that is exactly why I need to try again." Han Sol stopped working and turned to face her. "What do you mean?" "There is going to be another gathering tonight. A cultural exchange in the main plaza. Representatives from each species are supposed to share something about their homeworld and traditions. And you want to participate? I want to represent humanity properly this time. Show everyone that we are not the cowards Vextar claims we are." Han Sol felt a growing sense of unease. That sounds like exactly what he wants. Another chance to make us look bad in front of everyone. Maybe. But if I hide now, he wins completely. At least this way, I can try to restore some dignity to our species. Han Sol could see the determination in his sister's eyes. Once Yunji made up her mind about something, it was almost impossible to change it. That stubbornness had helped her become an excellent scientist, but it also led her into dangerous situations. "If you are going to do this, I want to be there," he said. "Of course. I would feel better knowing you were watching." That evening, the main plaza was decorated with displays from different worlds. Holographic projections showed alien landscapes and cities. Music from dozens of cultures filled the air. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a beautiful celebration of galactic diversity, but these were not normal circumstances. The Kethrians had set up their own display featuring weapons and battle trophies from their various conquests. Vextar stood beside it like a museum curator, explaining to interested viewers how each item had been taken from defeated enemies. Han Sol and Yunji arrived as the formal presentations were beginning. Ambassador Dalsu introduced each species and invited them to share something meaningful from their culture. The Veltari representative spoke about their philosophical traditions. The Goran demonstrated traditional stone singing, a musical form that used resonant frequencies to create beautiful harmonies. Even the mysterious Zephyr showed a complex aerial dance that mesmerized the audience. When humanity's turn came, Yunji stepped forward confidently. She had prepared a presentation about human art and literature, focusing on how creativity helped humanity process difficult experiences and find hope in dark times. "Humans have always been storytellers," she began. "We use narratives to understand our place in the universe and to connect with others who share our struggles." She showed images of paintings, sculptures, and excerpts from famous books. She talked about how human creativity had flourished even during wars and disasters, proving that the human spirit could not be broken by adversity. The audience listened politely. Some seemed genuinely interested in learning about human culture. For a few minutes, Han Sol began to hope that this might actually go well. Then Vexatar stepped forward. "Interesting," the commander said loudly. "Humans create stories to cope with reality. That explains a great deal." Yunji tried to continue her presentation, but Vextar was not finished. "Tell me," he said, "do any of these stories feature humans actually winning battles? Or are they all about enduring defeat gracefully?" "Human literature covers many themes," Yunji replied diplomatically, "including stories of triumph over adversity." "Triumph," Vextar repeated mockingly. "Such as negotiating with pirates instead of destroying them, or evacuating colonies instead of defending them." "Literature is not meant to be a military manual," Yunji said. "It explores the full range of human experience." "The full range," Vextar mused, "which apparently does not include actual victory in combat." Han Sol could see his sister's composure beginning to crack. Vextar was doing exactly what he had done at the research presentation, turning a cultural exchange into an attack on human character. "Art and literature serve important purposes beyond military applications," Yunji said, her voice slightly strained. "Do they? Or are they just distractions that weak species use to avoid facing reality?" Vextar moved closer to the presentation area. Let me share something about Kethrian culture. We do not create stories about enduring defeat. We create legends about crushing our enemies completely. He gestured toward his display of weapons and trophies. Each of these represents a victory. A world conquered, an enemy destroyed, a challenge overcome through superior strength. The audience was watching this exchange with the same uncomfortable fascination they had shown at the research presentation. They knew they were witnessing something ugly, but they could not look away. Different cultures have different values, Yunji said quietly. Indeed, they do, Vextar agreed. Some cultures value strength and conquest. Others value weakness and surrender. The question is, which type deserves to inherit the galaxy? He turned to address the entire crowd. Look around you. This station exists because strong species like mine protect it. Weak species like the humans contribute nothing but empty words and false hopes. That is not true, Yunji said, finally showing some anger. Is it not? Name one significant military victory in human history. One time when your species defeated a superior enemy through courage and strength. Yunji opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. Human military history was indeed marked more by strategic retreats and negotiated settlements than by glorious victories. It was not because humans were cowards, but because they chose their battles carefully and preferred solutions that saved lives. But to someone like Vexatar, it looked like weakness. I thought so, the commander said with satisfaction. Humans have no warrior tradition because they have never been warriors. You are prey animals who learn to talk. The insult hung in the air like a physical blow. Hansol felt his muscles tense involuntarily. Calling someone a prey animal was one of the worst insults possible in galactic culture. It marked them as fundamentally inferior to predator species. We should continue with the cultural presentations, Ambassador Dalsu said, stepping forward diplomatically. Vextar ignored him completely. I think this little demonstration has shown us everything we need to know about human culture. It is built on the delusion that weakness can be disguised as virtue. He looked directly at Yunji. Your stories and art are meaningless, just like your research. You contribute nothing of value to galactic civilization. Yunji's face flushed red. You do not know anything about humanity. You judge us based on prejudice and ignorance. Do I? Vextar smiled coldly. Then educate me. Show me something about humanity that deserves respect. Our science, our exploration, our commitment to peaceful cooperation. Words, Vextar interrupted. Empty, words backed by nothing. When real challenges arise, humans run and hide behind stronger species. He stepped even closer, now standing directly in front of Yunji. Face the truth, little human. Your kind exists only because predators like me allow it. You are pets, not equals. That was too much. Yunji straightened her shoulders and looked directly into Vextar's black eyes. You are wrong, she said firmly. Humanity has just as much right to exist as any other species. We may not be warriors, but we have our own strengths. Prove it, Vextar challenged. I do not need to prove anything to you, because you cannot. Vextar's voice carried across the entire plaza. Because when faced with a real predator, prey animals can only submit or run. He raised his hand and brought it across Yunji's face in a casual backhand slap. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent plaza, like a gunshot. Yunji stumbled backward, her hand flying to her reddening cheek. The force of the blow had been enough to knock a human off their feet, but somehow she managed to stay upright. For a moment, nobody moved. The assembled aliens stared in shock at what had just happened. Physical violence was rare on Harmony Station, especially against someone who was clearly not a threat. Vexatar stood with his hand still raised, looking satisfied with himself. That, he announced to the crowd, is what happens when prey forgets its place. Han Sol saw his sister standing there with tears forming in her eyes, her cheek already swelling from the impact. He saw the crowd of aliens watching with a mixture of horror and fascination. He saw Ambassador Dalsu frozen in place, clearly wanting to help but knowing that any action would only make things worse. And he saw Vextar standing there with that satisfied smirk, believing he had just proven his point about human weakness. Something inside Han Sol snapped. Han Solo moved like liquid death through the crowd. Years of training had taught him to find the perfect path, the exact angle of approach that would give him maximum advantage. The assembled aliens were so focused on Vextar's speech that none of them noticed the human engineer gliding between them. Vextar was still talking, his back partially turned as he addressed the crowd. "Let this be a lesson to all of you," the commander was saying. "Humans are prey animals pretending to be civilized. When faced with real strength, they can only—" Han Solo struck. First, second. His opening move was a precise palm strike to Vextar's solar plexus, delivered with perfect form and devastating force. The blow landed exactly where the Kethrian's armored ribs met, finding the one vulnerable spot in his natural armor. The impact drove every molecule of air from Vextar's lungs in an explosive whoosh. The massive warrior, who had been standing confidently a moment before, suddenly doubled over as his diaphragm spasmed uncontrollably. The crowd gasped as they realized what was happening. Several aliens started to move forward, but they were too slow to intervene. Vextar's black eyes went wide with shock and pain. He tried to straighten up, tried to grab for the human who had attacked him, but his body would not obey. All he could do was struggle for breath that would not come. Second. As Vextar's head came down from the solar plexus strike, Han Solo was already moving into his next attack. His knee rose to meet the descending skull with mechanical precision. The sound of the impact was like a hammer striking stone. Vextar's supposedly unbreakable skull met Han Solo's knee with bone-crushing force. The collision sent shockwaves through both combatants, but only one of them had been prepared for it. Vextar's head snapped back from the knee strike, purple blood already flowing from his flattened nose. His eyes lost focus as his brain rattled inside his cracked skull. The proud warrior who had dominated every conversation for the past week was now reeling like a drunk. The watching aliens cried out in alarm. Several Kethrian warriors started pushing through the crowd toward their commander, but they were still seconds away. Second. Han Solo caught Vextar's stunned head between his hands with practiced efficiency. For a brief moment, the two beings were face to face. The human's eyes were calm and focused, while the Kethrian's were glazed with pain and confusion. "This is for my sister," Han Solo said quietly, though his words were lost in the noise of the panicking crowd. He drove Vextar's head down onto his rising knee one final time. The second impact finished what the first had started. Vextar's skull, which had been cracked by the initial knee strike, now shattered completely. The sound was like breaking pottery, wet and final. Purple blood sprayed across the deck plates as the most feared warrior in the Kethrian military collapsed unconscious. His massive body hit the ground with a thud that shook the entire plaza. Silence fell over Harmony Station like a physical weight. Han Solo stood over the fallen commander, breathing normally, his clothes barely disturbed. 3 seconds had passed since he threw his first strike. In that impossibly brief time, he had reduced the galaxy's most dangerous predator to a broken heap on the floor. The assembled aliens stared in complete shock. Many had never seen real combat before. None had ever witnessed anything like this. A human, a supposedly weak prey species human, had just destroyed a Kethrian warrior with surgical precision. Yunji was the first to break the silence. "Han Solo," she whispered, her hand still pressed to her bruised cheek. He turned to her with the same gentle expression he always wore. "Are you all right?" She nodded mutely, unable to process what she had just witnessed. This was her brother, the quiet engineer who fixed power couplings and worried about her safety. But the being who had just demolished Vextar moved like a trained killer. The Kethrian warriors finally reached their commander. They knelt beside his motionless form, checking for vital signs. Purple blood pooled around Vextar's shattered skull, but he was still breathing. "Barely. Get him to medical immediately," one of them shouted. They lifted their commander carefully and rushed toward the station's hospital section. Ambassador Dalsu approached Han Solo cautiously. "Son," he said quietly, "we need to talk." But before Han Solo could respond, the crowd erupted in chaos. Aliens were shouting in dozens of different languages, some demanding his arrest, others backing away in fear. The peaceful cultural exchange had become a crime scene in 3 seconds. Security forces arrived within minutes, their stunners drawn but not yet aimed. The head of station security, a methodical Goran named Torek, surveyed the scene with his usual calm efficiency. "What happened? Here?" he asked in his deep, rumbling voice. Dozens of beings started talking at once, each giving their version of events. The testimonies were contradictory and emotional, but certain facts emerged clearly. Commander Vexatar had struck the human female. The human male had retaliated with devastating force. The most feared warrior in the galaxy was now fighting for his life in the medical bay. "I will need statements from all witnesses," Torek announced. "But first, Han Sol of Earth, you will come with me for questioning." Han Sol nodded calmly. Of course. As the security team escorted him away, he caught a glimpse of the crowd's faces. The fear was still there, but it was different now. They were not afraid of what the Kethrians might do to humanity. They were afraid of what humans might be capable of. The walk to the security office gave Han Sol time to think about what had just happened. He had revealed himself in the most dramatic way possible. His cover as a simple engineer was blown. His carefully maintained, peaceful existence was over. But when he thought about Vextar striking his sister, he felt no regret. In the medical bay, teams of doctors worked frantically to save the Kethrian commander's life. His skull was fractured in 17 different places. His brain was swelling dangerously. Even with advanced alien medical technology, his survival was far from certain. News of the incident spread through the station's communication networks within minutes. Then it jumped to the galactic networks, racing from world to world at faster-than-light speeds. On a dozen different planets, beings who had dismissed humanity as harmless prey animals watched security footage of the fight with growing amazement. The video was analyzed frame by frame, slowed down and enhanced, studied by military experts and combat specialists. What they saw challenged everything they thought they knew about humans. The attack had been flawlessly executed. Every movement perfectly calculated. No wasted energy, no hesitation, no mercy. It was the work of a professional killer operating at the peak of his abilities. But the attacker was supposedly just an engineer from a species that everyone considered weak and primitive. In the Kethrian Empire, military commanders gathered around holographic displays, watching the impossible footage over and over again. Their greatest warrior, the being they had thought invincible, had been broken in 3 seconds by a creature they had dismissed as prey. Emergency meetings were called on a dozen worlds. Trade agreements were reviewed. Military assessments were updated. Diplomatic policies toward humanity were reconsidered with urgent priority. Back on Harmony Station, Han Sol sat in a security holding cell, waiting for the investigation to run its course. He had told Torek the truth about what happened, though. He had not yet revealed the full extent of his background. That conversation would come soon enough. Through the cell's small window, he could see ships beginning to arrive. News of the incident had brought reporters, diplomats, and military observers from across the galaxy. They all wanted to see the station where a human had shattered the skull of the galaxy's most feared warrior. Han Sol closed his eyes and thought about Yunji. She was safe now. That was all that mattered. Everything else was just consequences. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not the helpless prey species they had believed. Some would adapt to this new reality peacefully. Others would not. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, Han Sol allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Justice had been served in exactly 3 seconds. The investigation took 3 days. During that time, Harmony Station became the center of galactic attention. Ships arrived hourly, bringing reporters, diplomats, military analysts, and curious observers from across known space. Everyone wanted to understand how a human had accomplished the impossible. Han Sol spent most of those 3 days in conversations with Torek and other officials. He answered their questions honestly, though he revealed his background gradually. There was no point in hiding anymore. The security footage had already shown the galaxy what he was capable of. On the second day, Yunji was allowed to visit him in the holding area. She sat across from him in the interview room, studying his face as if seeing him for the first time. "Who are you really?" she asked quietly. Han Sol considered how to answer. "I am your brother. That has never changed. But you are also something else. No engineer moves like that. No engineer knows how to... She gestured helplessly. How to do what you did. I was a soldier before I became an engineer. Special forces. I served on the frontier worlds during the border conflicts. You never told me. I wanted to leave that life behind. When you got the position here, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to start over. To be the person I wanted to be instead of the person the military made me. Yunji was quiet for a long moment. How many others are there? Other humans like you? More than our enemies assumed. Fewer than they should fear. The way you fought, it was like you had done it 1,000 times before. Han Sol met her eyes. I had. That is exactly the problem I was trying to escape, but his sister was thinking about bigger implications. If there are more humans with your skills, why do we have such a poor military reputation? Why do we always negotiate instead of fight? Because most humans, even soldiers, are not like me, and because our leaders understand something that species like the Kethrians do not. True strength is knowing when not to use your power. But now everyone knows that we can fight. Yes, and that changes everything. On the third day, Torek delivered the investigation's conclusions. The security footage clearly showed Vexitar striking Yunji without provocation. Han Sol's response, while excessive, was ruled justified under station self-defense protocols. You are free to go, the Goran security chief informed him. Though I suspect your quiet life on this station is over. Torek was right. When Han Sol left the security office, he found a crowd of beings waiting for him. Representatives from various species, military attachés, diplomatic observers, and journalists all wanted to speak with him. Ambassador Dalsu was there too, looking both relieved and concerned. We need to talk, he said quietly. Privately. They made their way through the crowd to a secured conference room. Inside, Dalsu activated privacy shields and collapsed into a chair. Do you have any idea what you have done? The ambassador asked. I protected my sister. You shattered the skull of the most feared warrior in the galaxy, in front of representatives from 50 different species. The footage has been broadcast on every major network. I know. The Catharian Empire is demanding your extradition for attempted murder. 3 other military powers are requesting detailed information about human combat capabilities. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session to discuss humanity's status. Han Sol sat down across from the older man. What do you need? From me? The truth. All of it. If we are going to manage this crisis, I need to understand exactly what humanity is capable of. So Han Sol told him. About the special forces units that operated in the shadows during the border conflicts. About the selection process that found humans with unusual aptitudes for violence. About the training that turned ordinary people into precision weapons. How many? Dalsu asked when he finished. Perhaps 10,000 scattered across human space. Most are retired now, living quiet lives like I was trying to do. And they all have your capabilities? Some are better. Some are worse. But yes, they all have advanced combat training. Dalsu was quiet for a long time, processing the implications. Why was this kept secret from the diplomatic corps? Because it was deemed unnecessary. Human leadership believed that our reputation as peaceful negotiators was more valuable than fear of our military capabilities. And now? Now the galaxy knows that humanity is not defenseless. They will have to decide how to respond to that. Knowledge. Over the following days, the responses varied dramatically. The Veltari immediately opened new diplomatic channels, eager to strengthen their relationship with humanity. They had always valued intelligence over physical strength, and they saw an opportunity to ally with a species that possessed both. The Goran were more cautious, but respectful. They understood the value of controlled violence and appreciated the precision of Han Sol's actions. Several Goran military advisors requested meetings to discuss tactical cooperation. The Zephyr, ever mysterious, simply sent a message saying they looked forward to learning more about human potential. But it was the reaction from ordinary beings on the station that interested Han Sol most. As he walked through the corridors, aliens who had previously ignored him now stepped aside respectfully. Not from fear, exactly, but from a new understanding that humans were not the helpless creatures they had appeared to be. Yunji's experience was even more dramatic. Researchers who had dismissed her work now sought her collaboration. The Veltari scientist who had defended her during Vextar's harassment invited her to join a prestigious research project. Even the Goran engineer wanted to discuss her biological adaptation theories. "It is strange," she told Han Sol one evening as they walked through the station's garden section. "I have not changed at all. My research is exactly the same. But now, everyone treats me differently." "They respect you now," Han Sol said. "Not because you are different, but because they understand that dismissing you might have consequences. Is that really respect? Or is it just fear? Sometimes there is no difference. Fear can be the first step toward genuine respect." They paused beside an observation window that looked out into space. A Kethrian medical transport was departing, carrying Commander Vextar back to his homeworld. The warrior had survived, though his recovery would take months. More importantly, his defeat had shattered the aura of invincibility that had made the Kethrians so feared. "What happens now?" Yunji asked. "Now we find out whether the galaxy can accept humanity as equals instead of pets or predators." Answer came 2 weeks later when the Galactic Council announced its decision. Humanity's application for full citizenship was approved unanimously. The vote that had been delayed for years was suddenly fast-tracked through the bureaucracy. Along with citizenship came new responsibilities. Human military advisors were requested for several interstellar conflicts. Trade agreements were renegotiated on much more favorable terms. The frontier colonies that had been raided for years suddenly found their attackers looking for easier targets. Han Sol was offered a position as humanity's military liaison to the Galactic Council. It was a prestigious job that would have given him significant influence over interstellar politics. He turned it down. "Why?" Ambassador Dalsu asked when Han Sol declined the appointment. "Because I am exactly what I told everyone I was. An engineer who wants to live quietly with his sister. But you could help shape humanity's future in the galaxy. I already did, in 3 seconds. Now it is up to others to build on that foundation." Han Sol returned to his maintenance duties, though his workload was lighter now. The station's human population had grown significantly as other species actively recruited human expertise. More engineers, more scientists, more diplomats arrived weekly. Yunji threw herself into her research with renewed enthusiasm. Her work on biological adaptation was now funded by 3 different species, and she had research partners on a dozen worlds. She was building the bridges between cultures that she had always dreamed of creating. One evening, 6 months after the incident, Han Sol was working alone in the power distribution center when Torek appeared in the doorway. "I have something for you," the Goran security chief said. He handed Han Sol a datapad containing a message from the Kethrian Empire. The message was from Commander Vextar himself. He had recovered from his injuries, though he would never again be the warrior he once was. The message was brief. Human. Han Sol, I underestimated your species. This was a mistake I will not repeat. You fought with honor when defending your family. I respect this. The Kethrian Empire now understands that humans are not prey. We will adjust our policies accordingly. Your sister's research on biological adaptation has been added to our military academy curriculum. Knowledge is indeed a form of strength. Commander Vextar. Han Sol read the message twice, then deleted it. The past was the past. What mattered was the future that humanity was building in the galaxy. He returned to his work, content in the knowledge that his sister was safe and humanity had found its place among the stars. Sometimes 3 seconds was all it took to change everything. Later that night, as the station spun peacefully through space, Han Sol and Yunji had dinner together in the cafeteria. The room was filled with beings from dozens of different worlds, all talking and laughing together. "Do you ever regret it?" Yunji asked quietly. "What you did to Vextar?" Han Sol considered the question carefully.